Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The regular meeting of the Osceola Township Planning Commission will come to order. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on the agenda is additions or deletions to the agenda. Does any commissioner have any proposed changes? If not,
I do have an addition, actually, a discussion item, R1E zoning, just in general, if that's okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that.
That's okay. R1E zoning, just a discussion on R1E and possible modifications to it, if possible.
Okay. We'll put that under discussion items after we hear from Ross on the master plan.
Thank you. I think it needs a second and a vote, right?
Yes. Are there any other changes first? All right. We have a motion to change, to add to the agenda.
So moved.
Support?
Support.
Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. That now becomes item 7C, actually. Master plan update, and then R1E. Okay, moving along. Approval of the minutes. We have the minutes from October the 2nd. Did anybody have any comments or concerns regarding those minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve as submitted.
Motion to approve?
We have a motion to approve.
Support.
Call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. The minutes are approved. Good job as usual. Thank you. Next is public comment, an opportunity for citizens to speak with the commission about any items not on the agenda. Anybody like to speak? Come on up, please, to the microphone. Give us your name and your address so that we can hear you clearly.
Hi, my name is Bill Tunier. Address is 9595 Island Drive. We are here about the West Shore lot split. Most of these people are Jewel Colony residents. We know that the condos are slated to be built with no one approaching our community at all.
Okay, well, sir, I'm going to stop you for a second. That is an agenda item, and there will be a specific opportunity to speak when we get to that point on our agenda.
I get that, but I'm allowed to speak, right?
Yes, at this point of the meeting, it's 2 minutes, and about items not on the agenda.
I saw it was 3 minutes right now. And you're wasting my time. Is that okay?
Sir, it is not on the,
This is on the
this part of
agenda.
our
Your
public.
lot split is what this is about.
Well, then you have to wait until we get down to the lot split, and then you'll hear all about the lot split. I will then go to the audience, and everybody who wants
So
to
you're
speak
saying I
can
can't,
speak.
you're saying I can't say anything right now?
About
For
this?
3
No.
minutes. On your agenda, it says I'm allowed to talk at public comment for
You
3
are
minutes.
allowed to public comment about items not on the agenda.
And the actual condominiums are not on the agenda, just the lot split.
Okay, proceed. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. We are not against this development, if it's the right development for the community. Jewel Colony is a historic homeowners association, one of the first homeowners association in Michigan dating back to the 1920s. Jewel Colony was declared a historic site in 1986. An historic site, God, now you got me messed up. An historic site that falls under the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. This property on West Shore, without another egress, will become part of Jewel Colony and must conform to our zoning codes, which is single-family homes, and is preserved for the historic value of our properties. 28 condos is unacceptable. I have 3 points to consider when you're thinking about this property. One is, have you done an impact assessment? The consequences of this plan, basically. Jewel Colony has an old water main, it has an old sewer system, all being used for this development. Will will we end up with sewer problems? Right now, at the west end of Island Drive are 5 spots that are sinking in the road, and my guess is we already have sewer problems that nobody's addressing. Water pressure is already at an all-time low in the summertime, and we're going to add more water to that main. The extra traffic in our streets where our kids are playing, the runoff from the roads and the houses, that is the first point. The second point is the DEQ. Have we done a soil contamination inspection of the site? That maintenance building has been there, I think, for about 70 years, and it's been using pesticides, fungicides, and herbicides. And you know, back in the day, you could just dump this stuff, and we have no idea what kind of pesticides are in the ground. I don't believe you've done that kind of a test. And are there any underground tanks? The third thing, and lastly, is the roads leading into the site were paid for and paved by the homeowners of Jewel Colony. The heavy equipment that is going to go back and forth are going to destroy these roads, and maybe the contractor should be bonded to those roads. All that we're going to ask for, I will do during your public comments at that point.
Thank you for your comment. At such a time, if this lot split is approved, and if there is a development proposal submitted, all those factors will be taken into account by this commission. Moving on, are there any other comments of items not on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move to the first item of business, which is lot split number 385, West Shore Golf and Country Club. The applicant is Sam Sobel, 19855 West Outer Drive, Suite 207, and that's in Dearborn. Mr. Sobel is working in conjunction with Safeway Acquisitions. Safeway is a potential property purchaser. Both are authorized representatives for the property owner, seller, West Shore Golf and Country Club. The location legally is Lot 284 of Supervisor's Grocio Plat Number 31. The common description is Grocio Golf and Country Club, 22843 West River Road, Grocio. The parcel proposed to be split off is 9 acres. It's 9 acres of the 118-acre West Shore property, potentially for future residential use. The remaining 109 acres remains as part of the golf course. The 9-acre parcel is located on the north property line, adjacent to the rear yards of residents along Island Drive. Access to the parcel is from Balmoral Street, the dead end from the north. The property is generally wooded. There is a large golf course maintenance shed and outside storage area adjacent to it. The zoning on this, the property is zoned R1D, single-family residential. Since this constitutes area for new buildable lots, the R1E zoning standard applies. Applicable ordinances, therefore, are Article 3, single-family residential, specifically the requirements under R1E residential zoning. And secondly, Article 19, general provisions, specifically 19.21, which is lot splits and consolidations. The relevant processes on this. This is a lot split. The Planning Commission will review it tonight and will make a recommendation accordingly. It then goes to the Township Board for their final approval. Should the applicant, new property owner, assuming that the Township Board approves this, wish to submit a proposal for this property, that will come back to the Planning Commission with all the details and factors that go into meeting all of the ordinance standards that are in our books. So tonight, we're not discussing what may or may not be proposed. What we're discussing is the lot split itself, and does it meet the requirements as outlined in the zoning ordinance. That's the essence of the Planning Commission decision that we need to make tonight. I do expect that the Planning Commission will vote on this evening, and we'll take it from there. Brian, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the introduction as well. So I'm going to go through a couple of quick slides, overviewing the site, overviewing the process, and then diving a little bit into the review standards of your zoning ordinance. So do bear with me. Some of what I'm going to say is going to be redundant with what Chairman Schweikert just introduced. But this is the site we're dealing with. So if you can see on the screen, all of the West Shore property. So this particular parcel is just over 118 acres. The proposal before commission tonight is to divide off a 9-acre portion in this general area, and the remaining 109 would just remain at this time as part of the rest of the golf course. So, as Chairman noted, the site is zoned R1D, which is a single-family zoning designation. However, if the land division is approved, then the newly created parcel, which is identified in the submittal and on the screen as proposed parcel B, that parcel would be subject to the R1E overlay zoning district because it's a newly created, potentially developable parcel. So a couple of zoning items to keep in mind. As noted, this is a split, a land division that is before the commission at this time. I understand that there's some concerns. Obviously, we have a nice turnout from the neighborhood here tonight, but the commission is not, as Chairman noted, we're not evaluating any type of development proposal or request for this property. If the split is approved by the board, then the new owner will ultimately have to come forward with all of the necessary applications for development plan review. So whether that includes a condominium plan, a site plan, whether it's just a single-family home, whether it's a rezoning, whatever it might be, there are procedures in place for submittals and review of all of those items. And I do want to point out, just as a quick side note, back to the initial public comment and some of the questions that were just pointed out, part of any type of a rezoning or a condominium plan review in the future would necessitate that the developer prepare and submit an environmental impact assessment per your ordinances. That item is not in the zoning ordinance, but it is in the municipal code. So that will be a requirement of any future submittal if there is a development proposed for this property. So I just wanted to point that out since the question kind of came up already. And as noted, procedurally, this is a two-step process. It goes through Planning Commission for review recommendation. Township Board has the final approval authority over the land division. So the next slide is just a look at the existing parent parcel. This is the just over 118-acre piece on the left side of the screen, and then the proposed division. So up in the northwest corner here, this is the proposed parcel B, 9-acre piece off of the parent parcel, and that leaves just over 109 acres remaining for proposed parcel A. Again, this being essentially what is the bulk of the golf course now, and then this being the sort of wooded area in this northwest corner on the aerial photo. So in terms of the review criteria, we did put forth a formal review letter for your consideration. There's a little bit more detail in that. I'm just trying to keep it a little bit brief tonight so we can get into comments, questions, and ultimately hear from the residents. So on the screen are the 10 review standards that the commission and ultimately the board are to apply when considering land divisions. This is found in section 19.21 paragraph C of the township zoning ordinance. And again, long story short, the standards in terms of the dimensional requirements, the potential buildability, the areas, the widths, the road frontages, depth to width, those standards are all met and or not applicable, i.e. the depth to width in this case does not apply because of the size of the parcels. The one item I do want to bring up for some discussion and to have addressed by the applicant, be it Mr. Sobe or be it from West Shore directly, is related to the existing maintenance buildings on the golf course. So I'm going to go back to the aerial photo. So this was also referenced earlier to public comment. So there are some maintenance and storage buildings in this area of the property. These would be on proposed parcel A. So these would stay with the golf course. However, the access to those is essentially through a driveway that comes off of the Balmoral terminus into the current property. So in essence, if you look at sort of the parent parcel drawing here, there's just some driveways that lead into accessing those buildings. Based on the way I view the split, that driveway, at least partially, if not entirely, would need to cross over and/or through proposed parcel B. So in other words, in order for them to maintain access to their maintenance buildings, if they're to be retained, they would need to acquire some type of an easement to continue access through that drive. But that's a question I want to put back to them. So that's something that the petitioner will have to answer. We just need to know what the mechanism is for access to those buildings, whether it's an easement, whether they're simply going to access it through other parts of the golf course. Remember, we've got all this extra land here. They may very well not need access in this area. Maybe they can get it from the remainder of the golf course, or as was, I know, presented at least at one point during discussion of this project, there was at least an idea that those buildings might be removed and or relocated, though that's not the case anymore. So just need the petitioner to better address if they're going to stay, which I believe they are, how are they going to be accessed? And I apologize for being so brief, Mr. Chair, but that's really all I have. I'm happy to take any questions the commission may have, or I'll be here.
Questions from the commission? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Brian. Just leave that review criteria up there if you would.
Want this one?
Yes.
For sure.
Mr. Sob, the applicant?
My name is Mario Ferrante. As co-applicant, I'll be speaking on behalf of Mr. Silver Safeway. I'm also the president of West Shore Country Club as the acting president. Obviously, we're the ones splitting the property, so I'll be the one addressing the questions. The first question is, yeah, it's just 9 acres. It's a simple split. Number 8, the easement. There is, to the west of there is a place to facilitate, and there is a small drive that's not shown on the print right now where we can access the maintenance shed. However, saying that access point would not be as big as access point as we would like. The simple solution on that, which was discussed with the potential purchaser, would be very simply when we do the purchase agreement, because the purchase offer was subject to the lot split approval, we would in fact have the engineers draw in the easement and have a joint easement for the most of the road coming in before it curves around. So we don't really need that much easement. We already have easement, but to get a truck in or something of that nature, I mean, we have cart paths that accommodate regular trucks, a Ford truck, a Ford pickup, or things like that could go on our cart path, but that's not the way we'd want to access it. Access it. We'd want to access it from a regular road. We would just draw an easement in which both the purchaser as well as West Shore as the seller would share that easement going into that part of the shed. So that's already been thought of and discussed, and it's a simple engineering drawing with writing in the easement agreement as part of the lot split when we go to county.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to explore a little bit on that easement. Not trying to create more trouble than it's
Nope.
worth, but, I mean, as of, so the lot split that we're approving today it precedes lots of things, but it does precede the sale of the property, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and so if you don't have the easement in place as of the lot split, does it create a problem? I think what you're saying is you have access to it through a not ideal way, but you have access to it through the
We
cart
do.
paths.
We're not concerned about the access from the West Shore standpoint. However, what I'm saying to you is that obviously there's some contingencies on the lot split happening in which they would have to close on the property. As West Shore, as a seller, we're not going to let that happen unless we write in the proper easement agreement through the right-of-way. So we're not selling anything unless we have a proper right-of-way to our maintenance shed. So, and the developers, or the potential developer, or the purchaser, as I may call them, is more than aware of that and has no issue with it whatsoever.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Brian, that's, the order okay? I mean, I guess, I don't know, maybe Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
that's you.
I think, sorry, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, there's a couple of different ways to look at this. I think the reality is that they do have, it's not the access they want, but they do retain access through the rest of their property. So as far as a review standard goes, I believe the review standard is met, but I wanted to bring it up as part of the review and part of the discussion so that there wasn't something that, unintended consequences, so to speak.
That was
So-
the piece I wanted to make sure we covered, is that it doesn't create a stranded, building or something like that they can't
They still,
access.
because of the nature of the rest of the golf course property, they do still have access. So again, as far as I'm concerned, the standard is met. And I think that any easement that's worked out between the two parties, I think that can be done between those two parties. And I don't think it needs to delay any action of commission or ultimately.
Well, and as many of you know, I sit on Trenton Planning as well, and so in these situations, I mean, we would have no objection to the Planning Commission making it part of their notes and making it as a condition of the approval. So if you wish to make that recommendation as part of your approval process, we do not object.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to, I think I know where we're at here, but I just want to clarify, because this has been in front of us before when we were talking about rezoning, and, we talked about a lot of stuff other than, I think, a specific lot split. So tonight, when we look at potentially recommending to split this lot, the criteria that we use or we have to use is whether or not it meets the criteria of splitting a lot. What can happen with that lot or lots, okay, that's not our concern right now. I mean, that's not, we don't look at splitting a lot based upon what potentially can happen to the lots, or we just look at it from the standpoint of these are our ordinances. They want to split the lot. Both lots meet the criteria, and that's it. Am I correct in that?
Yes, you are 100% correct. The criteria that you see on the screen is the only criteria that we consider relative to this application. We do not have an application of any kind for a development. All we have is a proposal in front of us for a lot split. And the 10 criteria that you see on your screen is exactly what the Planning Commission needs to evaluate when you make a decision about this application.
So after, or the next step, let's say that we approve this lot split, and then there is a development or a potential proposal for a development, then that comes before us. We look at the criteria of our ordinances, R1E. So at that point, anything other than single-family homes with an R1E would be a zoning.
Yeah, there are lots of possibilities as to what might happen, okay? But we do not have an application for that. And so anything that's all speculation. All I can say for sure is that if an application comes forward, we will review it clearly against the appropriate ordinance standards. We will involve the public. We will get full input. We will take into account everything that's in our ordinance to make sure that application either meets the requirements or doesn't meet the requirements, and we make that decision.
And the process of changing our zoning, if there is going to be some kind of a application to change a zoning ordinance of maybe multi-family homes or something that's different than what it is now, then that's a process in itself that goes through the I guess the process.
Yes, it's a whole different process with totally different standards. Nothing like what you see on the screen. Neighborhood factors are absolutely included. Environmental standards, as Brian pointed out.
Right.
All kinds of standards come into play when you're talking about a potential major development.
And a few years ago, when this was in front of us, we were looking at that specifically, right? Which you outlined the process of going through and changing, because the maintenance shed may be moved over here, and then that wasn't really zoned for that area, and this isn't zoned for that area, and the whole process of changing the zoning in all these specific areas was, say, lengthy.
I think that's an understatement, okay? It was very lengthy, and that was because the applicant was throwing out ideas, okay? And the ideas changed. I mean, this is not new. This is we've been talking about this for 5 years,
Right.
okay? And it changes all the time. We do not have anything to evaluate tonight except the lot split.
And ultimately, that's what I just want to clarify, that the decision of the lot split is based upon this and only this.
Exactly correct.
Okay.
Any comments, Jay?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just want to point out that in the package that we were given on this proposal, there's 8 pages on West Shore condominiums with elevations and drawings and lot layouts and all that sort of thing. I think we ought to make it clear that that's not anything that we're considering in this
Yes.
submission.
Yes.
Because it's not relevant to the decision we're being asked to make tonight. Is that fair?
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah, and I think that it's important that because all this was in our packet, that's what I want clarification, is that none of this information of elevations and all the information of potential future development has anything to do with what we're deciding tonight.
It is irrelevant.
Okay.
Just a question on the lot split. Theoretically, could one single-family home be built in that lot split, or even that is not allowable?
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha.
Or it could be a nature preserve.
Yeah.
It could be anything
Yeah.
that's consistent with single-family residential.
Gotcha.
Other questions or comments about this? Are we all on the same page about what we're evaluating? Angela?
Yes, appreciate the clarification.
Brian? Okay. All right, then at that point, then let's go to the public, and let's go ahead and have a seat.
Thank you.
And we'll hear the public. Come on up, please, give us your name, and again, your address and comments regarding
This is Bill
the lot
Tunier.
split.
My name is Bill Tunier, 9595 Island Drive. And John was getting to the point. This lot split is being split so this gentleman can purchase this lot, but he has already submitted to the township the fact that he's going to build condos. I know you're not deciding on condos, but if he doesn't build condos, he may not want this lot. So to split this lot, you may want to table this and ask this gentleman if he doesn't have condos there, will he want the lot? And that's the problem. So, and that's why all the stuff is in your packet, and we got the same stuff. So what is happening up here is right. I get it. But I don't think he could build 11 homes on that piece of property and make money doing it. And that's why we're doing condos. And for 5 years, you guys have been talking about it, and nobody came to us. And that's the wrong thing about this whole thing. It's just not right. Okay? I don't disagree with the lot split, but the lot split has to conform to Jewel Colony. And this is not what is at the Township Hall, and that's not what's in front of you, and it's not right. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Additional comments? More hands back there? No other comments? Okay, then I'll bring it back to the table. Oh, do we have a comment? Oh, please, come on up. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
That's okay.
Give us your name and your address, please.
Certainly. Julianne Bruley, 9435 Island Drive. And I understand that this action item for today is solely the lot split, but when Mr. Tunier attempted to speak during the public comment at the beginning, we were told we would be discussing that. So I would like to speak about it. We're talking about the lot split to develop extra potential residences where and we don't have the map up, but where the road that all these new potential residences are going to use is going to be Balmoral. Currently, there's about 100 residences in Jewel Colony. If there is a build of what's being proposed, and I understand that's not before you today, but if it is the 28 condos or whatever was submitted in your packet, that's going to increase the traffic by about 30%. I have 2 small kids. I moved to Jewel Colony specifically for what it is. There are no sidewalks. My children are bused. My children sit at the bus in the road often, and so I worry about the safety and the use of the roads, specifically Island Drive, of course, where I live. also Lakewood. So I do just want to bring that before and have it, brought before the board of, my concern is really the safety and the safety of my children and the other children in the neighborhood. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. I should make a point here. I apologize. When you came up to speak and I said not on the agenda, you were 100% correct and I was 100% wrong, because the application for the development is in fact not on the agenda. We don't have an application, and I should have allowed you to speak without contradiction. That was my mistake, and I apologize. Okay, any other comments from the audience? Okay, let's bring it back to the table and talk about it. Jay, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think as we've established on the limited scope of the question before us today, I'm not sure that there are any reasons for objection. I think the couple of questions that I had, or one question that I had, has been cleared up, and I don't see any reason to object as long as it's understood that it's for the limited purpose that we've all made very clear so far tonight.
Okay, thank you. Jim, what do you think?
Thanks. I understand the lot split, concept, what we're here for today. This has come before us. What has been the communication, I guess, with Island Drive at this point in time? I'm just trying to clear up, I've heard things. I've heard there was offers for purchase of land and things of that nature. I know we're not discussing that, but I was just curious. I know it's been a 3, 4, 5 year process. Does anyone comment on that?
Brian, do you have any thoughts on that?
In terms of from the township's perspective?
Did we, when we've had pre-applications on various things, notifications, how do we exercise that?
There are no notification requirements for pre-application conferences.
Okay, so simply
So
public.
nothing there, and then
Correct.
it's just
There are numerous development plan proposal reviews that will or would require direct public notification as well as publication in the newspaper, but a pre-application conference does not require notification.
Additional thoughts, Jim?
No, I'm all set.
And no notification for lot splits either, generally, right? It's
That's correct.
yeah. But if there were a zoning change to put the condos in there, that would require notification of folks nearby, right?
Yeah, definitely. Rezoning of any form to any district would require a notification, direct mail to owners and occupants as well as published in the newspaper.
Well, first, I just want to thank everyone for showing up tonight. I live right near Jewel Colony. I know how special of a neighborhood it is. The community all have created there. My 4-year-old, his first time trick-or-treating was right along there because of what a special place it is on Halloween. So I just want to thank you all for coming tonight. As you all have heard, what we have before us is a lot split that doesn't involve the development that obviously is being considered here, but there's a long process before we get there where there will be notification if that were to be considered. Saying that, I value all coming here. This would obviously come before the township board before it was voted on, and I'd strongly encourage you all actually to submit public comments there. I don't want to waste your time, so if you want to do it through email, I'd encourage you to do that. That's something the township board can look at and see and consider as these plans move forward. But at least for me, it's pretty straightforward. I think it fits, what is required. It'd be very hard for me to vote against this, so that's where I'm at personally right now. Yep.
Thank you, Kyle. Angela?
I hate to use the term straightforward, because I think sometimes when we look at the factors and the requirements, on the screen, it all makes pretty cut and dry sense, but I understand having children of my own and, expectations when you move into a property, what that might look like in the future. I think in terms of, our role and what's in front of us today, and following the review criteria for the lot split, I don't have any questions in terms of that. I think going forward, I obviously will have some questions, some feedback, and I'll look at the proposal that's in front of us once it is in front of us, in great detail, and take a lot of the comments from the neighbors that are here today into consideration. I I wish we had some kind of timeline in place for some of these decisions that we make, because if we're here tonight approving a lot split, what does that look like in the next year? What does that look like in the next 10 years? Is there a requirement to develop it at all? My fear is in the opposite, that we won't come to an agreement, or the two parties won't come to an agreement anytime soon, and then what will happen, to that property. And I just want to make sure that everything looks as it should and remains as it should. So, no questions, just kind of general comments and feedback from me.
Thank you, Angela. John?
Well, this just doesn't feel right. And I understand that there's 10 criteria in front of us that we can say that all boxes are checked. And if it was as simple as just checking boxes, they would just put this on a computer and they would say, yes, 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 approve the lot split. But they don't, because there's circumstances that exist around lot splits that are subjective, and there's impact on lot splits. And the vast majority of lot splits we get are splits where there can be one home put on the split, and it's pretty easy for all of us to wrap our heads around the fact of where the driveway is going to be if there's a house built when the proposal comes forward to build a house. And we can understand the full process of the impact of splitting the lot. But this is different. Yes, every item, every review criteria is met. There's no doubt. You can't argue that. But in the packet that we have elevations, we have a development plan. And the problem with this large lot is what development is going to go on it, and how is that going to impact our island? How are you going to get to it? I don't know. We'll have an easement. Well, what about getting to the easement? Where's the traffic going to go? And all this stuff is going to obviously be addressed later, but we have to approve the lot split, and that is for us to be up here to decide, not a computer. So for me, I don't think I could support this lot split, because I don't know how it's going to impact all of us. And we're all residents. We all live here together. We all have neighborhoods. We all have children. We are here together. Now, could a development be put in there that addresses all these concerns? Maybe. I don't know. But for me, it just, at this point in time, especially after all of these conversations of what they're going to do, what they're not going to do, where are they going to move this, where are they going to move that, and now let's just take a small bite of this and try to get a lot split and come through the back door. And if it is true that all the residents that live there have not been part of it, how fair is it that we move forward so quickly on a lot split that impacts so many people and so many streets and not knowing how to get there? Eventually, would the lot split happen? I don't know. Maybe. Will development? I don't know. Maybe. We have very good ordinances in place to make sure our developments are as good as we can get and what we want as a community. And the other thing, too, is we're going through a master planning process right now. And if you haven't heard about it, it's Ross and his team put together a wonderful organization of getting a master plan together. It's going to take 12 months to put together. every resident has the option to participate, and it's in an easy process to participate of who and what we want on this island. Who are we? Let's define ourselves moving forward. So what is that? What is that? We're going to find out. So I just don't feel right at this time of just splitting a lot, even though it hits all these criteria. We don't have to approve it. We're not ordered by law to approve it. So I will vote no tonight.
Thank you, John. Additional comments, questions, concerns? From my perspective, passing a lot split has absolutely no bearing whatsoever on what might or might not be subsequently approved, if an application is ever submitted. If an application is submitted, I think I'll speak for everybody up here, that we will hold that application to the highest ordinance standards to make sure that the development is right for the neighborhood and is right for the community. That's our job, and that's what we've done for years up here, and we'll continue to do it. We will hold the applicant to the highest standards. That's just the way we operate. As far as this specific lot split is concerned, to me, it's clear cut. It meets the requirement. I'm voting yes. I would entertain a motion regarding this application.
So moved.
Motion to approve. Jay?
If I could make a friendly amendment to the
Please.
motion? And that the motion to approve contains a specific reference that none of the 8 pages of materials on future development are part of any consideration. I just don't want anybody to come back later and say, well, you guys knew all along this is part of it. So I want to make sure that that's clear, that that has nothing to do with the decision that we're making tonight.
Can we
And with
also
that, I
add
support
the
it.
easement that you raised?
Sure. That the easement would be, that the split is contingent upon an easement being granted upon any sale of the property.
Okay, we have a motion from Jay.
Well, it's my motion.
Oh, was your
and then,
motion?
Yeah, and then I approve the friendly amendment to the
Oh,
motion.
Okay.
That I support.
All right, so motion from John, support from Jay. Is there additional discussion on this? Brian?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Can I just jump in real quick? Could I just ask that it be clarified that it's a recommendation to the Township Board to approve? And then could I also ask that you, as part of the motion to recommend approval, that you cite compliance with the standards of 19.21C?
I think he said that.
Okay.
That's in the original motion there, Brian. If it's
The answer to
not,
that question is yes, Brian.
yes. I don't need a friendly amendment on that. That's there.
Okay, is there additional discussion? Call the question, all in favor signify by saying, well, I'm going to do a roll call. Kyle?
Aye.
Tim? Jay?
Aye.
John?
Nay.
Angela?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion carries. Brian, I would appreciate, please, that before this goes to the board, prepare a good findings of fact relative to this, so that it's clear when Kyle makes his presentation to the other trustees and board members. Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a special land use site plan review for a dog daycare boarding facility. The applicant is Freshwater Technologies LLC, 8841 Macomb, P.O. Box 742, Grosse Ile. The owners are Paul and Susan Dalfias, 10384 Bosher Road on Grosse Ile. The location is Commerce Park. It is an existing empty building, 300 yards west of approximately of the Grove Meridian intersection, and it's on the north side of Grove Road. The proposal, the building is currently vacant. The prior tenant used it for office space and light manufacturing. The proposal is to convert the interior space into facilities for dog care and boarding. And the proposal also includes a fenced outside play area on the west side of the building as well. The background. The applicant has been in front of the Planning Commission before. He actually received special land use and site plan approvals several months ago for a dog care facility at an existing empty building on the south side of Grow Road. It was subsequently learned that the building modifications, in order to bring it up in compliance with the ADA standards, was cost prohibitive. The Commerce Park Committee and the applicant worked together to develop a new plan in a new location that we will be reviewing tonight. The zoning is R1A, Airport and Light Industrial District. Dog kennels are treated as a special land use in this district. Since the Planning Commission is well familiar with the use and the applicant, we will review this application for both the special land use and the site plan tonight. The relevant ordinances, Article 9, Airport and Light Industrial District, Article 21, Site Plan Review, and Article 22, Special Land Use. The process is that we will proceed with Brian to speak about basically both elements of this. Okay, I will then bring it back and we will hold a public hearing under the special land use standards. We will bring it back to the table for discussion after public comment, of course, and then make a decision both on a recommendation for the special land use, which ultimately goes to the Township Board, and the site plan, which is a final decision by the Planning Commission. Okay, there will be another step for the applicant. There is a setback dimensional issue that requires Zoning Board of Appeals to review, and that is on the agenda for next week. And as I said, the Township Board is the last word in this application. So I do expect we will vote tonight. So Brian, why don't you lead us off?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. So once again, it's as though somebody showed you my presentation because you've taken most of my points. All right, sorry, I digress. Petitioners before you, this is a familiar project. They did receive special use and site plan approval, I believe it was in 2023. It was relatively recent. I believe we don't have any new members at this time, so at some point you all probably saw this and or were part of the discussion and the ultimate action on that project. This is essentially the same proposal at a new location. So we've moved from the south side of Grow, east side of the airport, to north side of Grow. Just immediately, if the shades were up and the trees were bare, you could almost see the building right through the windows here. So site is zoned A1 Airport Light Industrial District. As Chairman noted, kennels are allowed with special land use approval. I do want to just continue to put in sort of the caveat, because sometimes I know the word kennel maybe has a bit of a negative connotation, or people envision one thing or another, but understanding that this is a kennel by definition of your ordinance. So it's the care for the boarding of dogs or other domestic animals for a period of time. So in essence, the reality is the better description is dog daycare and boarding facility, and or we'll let the petitioner, maybe they have an even better description than that, but that's the gist of it. So I just want to make sure that we kind of keep our terminology consistent, but under the ordinance, it is a kennel. So that's what we're dealing with tonight. Mr. Chairman already identified the process, so the special use is one action. That is a recommendation to the Township Board. The site plan is a separate action. You do have the approval authority over that. So your options tonight, Chairman already laid out for you, but you may act on the site plan, and it could be contingent upon Board granting the special use, or you could postpone action on the site plan until such time as the Board has acted on the special use. It sounds like the former is sort of the direction that we're headed tonight, but I just wanted to make sure you understood that you do have that authority under the ordinance. So we have a couple of photos, obviously taken recently. There's no temperature gauge on it, but you can see the snowfall. So this is the front side of the building. This is the existing parking lot. This is sort of an angled view of the same front side of the building with the fenced-in side yard on the west side of the building. I probably could have stayed at the aerial a little bit longer. So it's this portion of the building here under the darker shingled roof, and then it includes sort of this outdoor fenced-in area. Was formerly sort of an outdoor storage yard. Petitioner is going to dress that up nicely and make a much nicer outdoor activity area for the dogs under their care. To which, here is the sketch included with their submittal. So again, you can see off to the right the building, and then you can see within the fenced-in area, they are incorporating sort of some additional areas. So they are still not only inside the building, but outside the building for the exercise areas. There still will be some separation. So they can use, whatever judgment they have to use in terms of certain dogs in certain locations together versus others being separated. And then this is, again, that outdoor storage yard right in here on the west side of the building. And then internally, again, sort of in terms of the intensity and the types of improvements inside the building, this is very much like what you saw last time, just a little bit different layout because it's a different building. But for the most part, very, very similar. The functions, the operations are essentially all the same as what you saw last time and what was ultimately approved by the board. So with that out of the way, I will jump into some of the review criteria and just put forth some comments. I do have a couple of suggestions / opinions as part of this, but that's something that we'll discuss here tonight as part of this process. So we'll start with the special use. We've applied the standards of section 22.3. As you'll note in my review letter, I did find that those standards are essentially met. My only caveat is that there is a requirement that is based on compatibility with adjacent uses. I do feel as though that is met. However, part of that consideration is the specific use requirements for this particular business, this particular use. So I do want to make sure that those standards, specifically 9.3C4, are met to the commission's satisfaction. So if you can make a clear finding that those are met to your satisfaction, I have no issue with compatibility of adjacent uses. Piggybacking that, the use requirements of section 9.3C4 include the following. All of the items are met. I just have two comments. Chairman already noted. One, there is a deficient setback from public right-of-way from Liberty Avenue to the north, from the exercise area, and from Grow Road to the south for the existing building. Again, these are existing conditions. This use just happens to require a larger setback based upon the potential impacts of it. And the intent of that increased spacing or increased setback is really to protect potentially less impactful uses or less intensive uses. So for instance, if this were across the street from or side by side with a residential use, obviously there's a significant potential impact there. This particular site is within Commerce Park, and there's no residential anywhere near it. There are light industrial uses, there are indoor storage uses, there are outdoor storage uses. That's kind of the extent of the immediate vicinity of what we're working with. So I don't personally think that there's really much of an impact in terms of surrounding uses. The other comment under these use requirements is there is a provision that dogs have to be kept indoors from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I just want to make sure that the petitioner is aware of it and acknowledges that, and that's an operational standard they will have to abide by. It just wasn't specifically identified in the submittal material, so I want to make sure that we address that. With the use items out of the way, the site plan, again, I've only incorporated a couple of their slides, by the way. I think you have their full submittal in your packets, and I do have your full submittal on the computer. So when you get your turn, if you want to show more, you are welcome to. The site itself, again, existing building, existing parking lot, existing fenced-in outdoor storage area. The comments that I put forth, anytime we get a new business, a new use review on an existing development, we do look for areas where we could potentially make some minor improvements. In this case, I did note that upon site visit, There is a dedicated parking lot for this site. I do think it's a better situation, a better layout than the previous site, but the pavement striping has just worn away at this parking lot. So I am suggesting that as part of this project, they be required to work with Commerce Park, however it needs to get done, just to restripe those parking spaces. I think that will make a big difference. And I also did point out as well that there are some existing light fixtures that aren't completely up to current ordinance standard. Understanding this is a kind of an industrial area, I kind of get why they're there and what they are, but I would suggest that we at least give some discussion to or some consideration to swapping some of these out or even reorienting them. If you can look at the screen, this one in particular kind of drew my attention. It's sort of I haven't seen it on at night, so I don't know how bright it actually is, but essentially it's a floodlight that shines kind of directly outward. That's contrary to the lighting standards in your ordinance. So I would love to see that either tilted down or replaced. And then the other two that I pointed out are kind of these wall packs. There's one above the door on the grow side. There's one above the door on the outdoor storage side. Those kind of shine light outward. They're not fully shielded enclosed fixtures shining downward. So I would suggest, like I said, we give some consideration to swapping those out or put new shields on them. I'm not looking for the petitioner or Commerce Park to have to expense a considerable sum of money to make building improvements, but I did want to point those couple of items out. So I say that looking right at John, so I don't get yelled at.
I have my calculator out here, and
My closing point is part of the summary sheet of the improvements that the petitioner is making includes some repairs to the existing ground sign that sits out front at Grow Road. This is just merely a statement for the petitioner's understanding, but if the plans are approved, you will still have to obtain a sign permit before you can install any signage on that structure. So nothing that the commission necessarily needs to worry about, but it's again sort of an acknowledgement. I want to make sure they know that if site plan approval is granted, that doesn't give them the right to go pop a sign up on the structure. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair. Happy to take any questions, though.
Questions for Brian? No questions. Very good.
Brian,
Thanks
are you
again.
sure it wasn't just covered with snow and the stripes were there?
Stripes. I did visit before the snowfall, so they're definitely.
so you do know that Paul met with him to put this in there, right?
This was all on my own, John. This
This isn't anything new to him. He's going, what do you really need improved before we get in there? I'll meet with John right after the meeting.
merely suggestions, Mr. Chair.
I do have a quick question. I like the site, I'm just going to say, better than the previous, a lot better. I
Agreed.
think it's more visible, and there aren't any residential homes, close to it. There are tenants. Is that, and I'm just trying to get my bearings about me, are the tenants that lease spaces, are those in the, and maybe John, you're better served to answer that question, in the larger space to the, on the east side of the?
Yeah, so if you look to the east and the north from this front area we're talking about, that is open warehouse. And we have an agreement with a caretaker that provides indoor heated storage. And our agreement is they manage it and we give them a percentage of profit. So it's just a big
Open heated
open
storage
warehouse
area.
heated storage for
Okay.
boats and cars and RVs and things.
So it doesn't abut anyone that's,
No.
could potentially be disturbed with the dogs barking or anything like that? Can we do anything about the weeds in that parking lot?
What's that?
Weeds in that parking lot?
The weeds
The way
in the-
that parking lot looks while
The
we're at it?
weeds,
Not-
so
not
to
to
cut
the
down the
places that-
bushes. I haven't heard that one in the last 2 days.
Just saying.
I liked it.
That's it, no, that was my question.
And Mr. Chair, just
Yes, sir.
to piggyback the part of the sentiment of the question, I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but also do be aware, because this is a special land use, we did have to do public hearing notification for this. And while Commerce Park is the owner, obviously Airport Commerce Park was notified, but also were the occupants
Okay.
of these individual spaces too. So
That
so
was
there
my
was
question.
notification
Thanks.
that
Thank
went
you.
out.
Okay, thank you. The applicant, Paul, want to come on up, please? Please share your thoughts if you have additional thoughts from what Brian has said.
Light, the large light that's.
That guy?
Yeah, that light right there is actually for the flagpole. It shines up at the flagpole. If you notice, there's one on this building, and if you go to the new building, the new storage facility, they have a flag. There's a LED light just like that facing up at, so when there's a flag up at night, obviously, laws, rules. So, you know,
Fair enough.
I guess if you're gonna put a flag up and it's directed at the flag and it's not shining out into the roadway, then certainly there's obviously. Unless you don't want us to put a light on a flag.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sit down, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Any questions? I don't want to have to belabor going through the whole.
Questions for the applicant? Kyle?
None at this time. I'm just glad you all are keeping at it.
Hey, Jim?
Thank you.
I don't have anything at this time.
Jake?
When are you taking reservations?
Hopefully April timeframe. We're trying to get through this process, obviously, so.
Nothing else from me. Thank you.
John? Questions?
I think I have to publicly apologize, and I always admit when I'm wrong, just so that everyone knows, this was the first choice of a location that Paul and Sue had. And I quickly shuffled them away from it down to a building that I thought would play better for the airport in the long run, and it had just become available, and I wanted to get somebody in as soon as possible. And things always turn out for the best, right? I mean, good people work together, good things happen, and this is an example of that. And I do want to say that in the last year, I don't know Sue well, but I know she is a police officer on the island. She is dedicated to this public safety, this island. But I've gotten to know Paul, who has spearheaded this, and he's one of the finest gentlemen that I know. And he is so fair and so honest and so accommodating. I can't believe how patient he was through this whole process. And having this business in its current location, or in the location that we're going to vote on tonight, just has expanded the beauty, and I say beauty, and you can say I'm biased, but that's fine, with our township hall here, our new Commerce Park sign. We're going to be putting a restaurant bar on the east side of this facility here that will open up more lighting and more activity for the public. The storage facility turned out beautiful. I mean, it's just absolutely gorgeous. You drive by it at night, it fits well. So to have this corridor here benefit now from this doggy hotel is just a wonderful benefit to the airport, but more important for the community. So, Paul, you were right. I was wrong. I told you I'd say that, and I hope we get this approved. And like Jay said, when you get open.
Well, I appreciate those kind words. Let's see in a year as I'm a tenant and see how this works out, and see if you think the same. We'll see how that.
Well, if you could hold everything in and work with us during this process, you're going to have no problem being a tenant.
Appreciate that.
Because we only care about one thing at that point.
Right. I know. I know what that is too. Any other questions?
Angela?
Or concerns?
No, I think this would be
Okay,
a great idea.
why don't you take a seat, and we will formally open the public hearing for the special land use. Are there any comments? Seeing no hands, I'll bring it back to, please, come on up.
Just want to add that this location is already ADA compliant.
All right. Okay, no other comments from the audience, so I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion from John, support. Support. Support from Jim. Call to question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried, the public hearing is closed. To bring it back to the table now, I would entertain a motion regarding the special land use.
So moved?
Motion to approve the special land use from Kyle, is there support?
Support.
Support from Angela. discussion? Are there any special conditions of those three that you mentioned, which are special land use oriented?
Mr. Chair, I would deem the conditions that I would suggest are tied more to the site plan.
Okay.
So I think we can incorporate those there. I would just ask that the motion include demonstration of compliance with the standards of 22.3.
I think that's what Kyle said, right?
I
Okay, we got that. Okay. No further discussion. Call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We'll now go to the site plan and entertain a motion regarding the site plan.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve
Brian, what were
Support.
your conditions?
with three conditions,
With with Brian's
or two
conditions.
conditions. Brian, please, what were those?
that variance is granted by zoning board of appeals. I would like to see the parking lot striped. I guess maybe we'll deal with the lighting administratively. And then the third one I would say is, I do want to tie this back to the special use because they are sort of interrelated. So I would also include that the township board grants special land use approval.
Okay. Acceptable, Kyle?
Yes.
Acceptable?
I said support, yes, acceptable, thanks.
Okay, call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. Special land use recommendation is approved. Site plan is approved. You're on your way. And John, I will take my hat off to you on this. You made this happen. And great job for the community.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, I didn't know if I needed to disclose a conflict of interest and that I plan to be a customer.
Okay. We're now up to discussion items. Ross is here from Community Development, and he's going to tell us what's been going on with the master plan.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can't make this into a full view, but so I just want to give you a brief update of where we are. Hopefully you've all had a chance to take the survey. At this point, we are halfway through. So far, we've had 720 responses. These are all generated online, and we've had 260 people sign up for email responses so that they can stay informed in the process, so that they can come to those round tables that we're going to have in the future and stay up to date on planning commission meetings and for that to continue on that public participation process. I just kind of wanted to touch base on a few key points that we've gotten from the master plan survey so far. Out of those 720 respondents, 698 are from the island, 75 work in Groseal, 63 are students in Groseal, and 25 visit Groseal, and 94.3% are homeowners. And I'm not sure what the others are. Maybe they're younger students that live with their parents and they don't own the home, right? But a majority of our respondents have lived here for 20 plus years, and you can kind of see how that kind of tapers off as we go back to less than 5 years, 5 to 10 years. When asked how they get around the island, they drive alone, they walk and bike, 450 about walk, 400 bike. And this is kind of the major one, what type of improvements you'd like to see in the future. Again, this first survey that we've presented, it's generalized, but it's enough for us to kind of hone in on, what are the conversations we want to have with the public. 65% say they would like to have improved parks and recreation, increased connectivity, entertainment and retail opportunities, and then it kind of goes down to education, utilities like self-service, Wi-Fi, water, trash recycling, access to grocery and medical services that came in at 26%, placemaking, sustainability, arts and culture, housing was third to last, and then work, and then wayfinding. So I think that although we have about 2 more weeks here left, I think that the housing was kind of interesting, right?
That's what we're just talking about.
Yeah, because we are an aging community. We think that maybe there were some of those alternatives that some people were kind of seeking. Maybe going on this trend across the country, we're seeing the older population downsizing, going to that smaller footprint. But people in Grillsville love their houses. So that's sort of where, in the phase 2 of things, which we are entering right now, and I'll get into that later, we're going to have those close discussions with the community to have those conversations. Wayfinding, I mean, I'm sure that almost nobody knows what that is when they look at this, so that's not surprising. But
Real quick, what was the age demographic? We saw will you get to that?
Yep, coming
Okay.
down right now. I should have had a
Okay.
graph, but I was running out of time. So the age, keep in mind that the median age in Grillsville is 53, so 23% of respondents are from age 60 to 69. 20% were age 40 to 49. And what's really discouraging, that because we've been really trying to push and kind of get to this audience of respondents that are under the age, that are from 15 to that are under the age of 29, we've only had a collective of 5% of people actually respond. So anybody under 29 did not fill out the survey. So we will push to reach this demographic. I'll utilize, there's social media things that you can do to target specific demographics on the island. And I've, and just kind of backpedaling, we've sent out push notifications to all residents on the island who signed up for Code Red, have made several Facebook posts. We have things set up here at Township Hall. I've dropped stuff off to the rec department and on businesses on Macomb Street. To John's point, we should have, I'm going to go to churches to see if they would be accepting of, we have flyers and some material, so I'll be going to those as well. But I think that trying to really get some of the younger demographic to participate would be great. And as far as key demographic takeaways for household income, and keep in mind that the median income in Grillsville is $125,000 per household. 27% of respondents have incomes above $200,000. 20% of respondents have incomes $100,000 to $149,000, and 15% of respondents had incomes from $150,000 to $199,000. So, in phase 2 of the survey, I think that we're going to really reach out to see if we can send direct mailings to those household incomes that have below $99,000, because they were the lowest respondent rates as well. So, and you know, the total household income, again, it is on that higher end in the island, but we're trying to reach all groups here, right? So,
If I'm reading this right, I mean, don't we have 37% response from those below at 99,000 and below? 37% of the respondents are, if I just subtract 100 from the 3 numbers that you have captured there.
yeah, but the demographic, so there's a 99,000 to 130,000 or 140,000. I didn't include all the demographic breakups in this. I just kind of took a summary from it. So there's different income brackets that are shown. Like there's a 29,000 and below. There's a
Okay.
yeah. So, and again, once we do collect all this data, we still have 2 more weeks left. Smith Group will be coming here to present on all the data and really dive deeper into all this stuff. So,
Mr. Chair, I have
sir.
a question. I don't want anyone to like read into any deeper of what I'm going to ask. So we collect all this data and we have these demographic groups, and you want to try to get as much data from each group as you can before we have it all collected. And now we start analyzing it. Is there a weight given to each demographic group of the importance, I guess, of the input?
I wouldn't necessarily say so. It's just getting attempting to get equal representation from each demographic group.
Right, so now when they evaluate the data and they make decisions based upon that data of what the community has said, right?
Right.
Do they look at any demographics heavier than others
I think-
in their recommendation?
No, I think that what they might do is say simply that this demographic wants this, which might conflict with the opposing demographic, right, or the other different sides of things. I think that's might what they might highlight those things.
And ultimately, then it would be our decision as a community to decide if there's conflicting data, which is more important, I guess, or the direction.
Right. I think that typically it's, the recommendations for, to make these for the plan direction, right, of what we want to see out of the plan, it comes from the numbers, right? You got to look at the broad, the broad figures of things. If people say they want more parks and recreation, I think no matter what demographic you're in, you can say, I would like to have more access to parks, right? And that's sort of where we can direct our plan. I hope that answered.
I think I could see a scenario where a large number of responses from a higher income bracket would say something like, perhaps they wouldn't be interested in less expensive homes or condominiums, as opposed to some of the responses from the, like, a lower income bracket. But I think that's something that we should take into consideration in discussions, because the income only tells a portion of the story, right? And especially if we're targeting 29 and younger, there's a very good chance that the income bracket's going to fall below 99,000, and those are going to be people that we need to make considerations for the next 40 years if we want them to be residents. And by the same token, the folks that are in the higher age bracket, whose income stayed the same and will continue to stay, they might have a different response as well. So I think hopefully we'll get the additional color of those.
Yep.
It won't be just categorical.
Right.
Because I think those are important
And
things.
that's my point,
That's,
right?
and that's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
I was
right,
I was
right.
just pulling.
Yeah, thank you for
on that thread a little
thank you
bit.
for clarifying it.
Yeah, I'm sure that they're going to.
You're awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of more complex, like pivot tables and Excel spreadsheets that you can say, this demographic says this when it comes to this, and I'm sure that they're going to present all that information and kind of make sense of the data, right? Okay. They're going to tell the story of the data. They have a whole team that's, that can help out with those sorts of things. So.
I know for me too, like I'd want to know, like in my mind, older folks I assume would want to downsize, but I'd pay attention to what older folks say in the survey over what I have in my mind. Mm-hmm. Same thing with younger folks, like if they're having to move away from the island, that's what I'd pay attention to with that and what they're saying. So that in that sense, I would weight those categories in that sense.
Just to kind of bring us back here to the project schedule. So we start off with the steering committee work sessions. That was in the Q3 of 2023. We did have our joint work sessions with the township board. We did our internal kickoff, engagement outreach, mobile community tour. We launched our website, and public touch point, vision and values. So coming into Q1 of 2024, the planning commission meeting, which will be coming up soon. I'll get into that in the next slide. And we'll be hosting roundtables with relevant groups around housing, and with, I think Smith Group said they were interested in coming to the high school and maybe talking with, the parents and the children, and kind of, about different topics as well. So, and they've been consistently working on the land use analysis, the housing needs assessment, and the waterfront strategy, kind of where are those opportunities that we could utilize, have public land to increase waterfront access for the residents. So next steps, late January, we're going to make that final push for the survey. We're going to try to increase those numbers. They're continually trickling in, but I think that we could do a little bit more to get more people to put their input. January 31st, the survey will close. Mid-February, we'll do a check-in with steering committee, share key takeaways from existing conditions, workshop on engagement and next steps for feedback for the next survey we'll send out. In mid-March, we'll have a planning commission check-in where they'll present sort of all their findings up to this point, findings from the survey as well. And that's where we'll workshop on the plan direction, sort of based off of everything they've provided, where do we see the plan going? And after that, community needs pop-up number 1 will happen in March. We'll launch the second survey as well. And that second survey, I haven't really I just know that to be much more refined based off of the first survey and sort of the land use analysis and all those sort of things, all the things that they look through all of our township plans and sort of compared them to existing conditions and seeing, what kind of lines up to make future decisions. And then we will promote that second survey by mailing to key demographics, social media postings, various news outlets, and that's all I've got. Any questions?
Very good. Questions? Questions for Ross?
A suggestion for the survey, I think just easily communicating to the folks, the residents that we want their kids and their college kids to take the survey. I think that could help you get to that number pretty quickly. We've had that instance in other aspects. I think for the school strategy team, we did that. So, and that worked out pretty well. So,
I'll ask the $64,000 question, and that is, when do we think we'll get through this process and then the master plan? I mean, what's the overall timing look like?
So we are still, and it's a $90,000 question actually.
There you go.
But so it'll be
Living in the 70s, man.
got to add inflation.
Russ
to
has
it,
no idea what I'm talking about.
But so we're still on track to hit our November deadline, which is good. Because we want to hit that November deadline so that, we don't have to go through a new township board. The township board that's here right now is well aware, and we've been working on this all together. So we're meeting deadlines, so which is good.
Additional questions?
I'll just say, Ross, if there's any way I can support you in getting this out, I have some ideas. The biggest one being, a lot of folks will put off doing a survey until the last minute. So one last code red push or whatever, just say, hey, there's 1 week left to complete this, please do it. I think we'll get a good amount of new responses. So if I can support you in telling Brian Friel, whomever else, on that extra push, I'm open to it.
Cool, thanks.
Right, very good. Ross, thank you very much. Good summary. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
We look forward to hearing from you in another, in March. Yeah, great, thanks. Okay, that completes the master plan update. We had the addition to the agenda that Kyle asked for regarding R1E zoning. Perhaps, Brian, it would be good if you would explain what R1E is.
How much time do we want to take, Mr. Chair?
Well,
I'm kidding.
Try to do without saying 30,000.
I think as everyone will recall, this has come up a handful of times. Obviously, it's a part of your ordinance that comes up specifically when we have land divisions that create new buildable lots. So what the R1E district is it's a single-family zoning designation that is an overlay district. That is, it isn't necessarily a district that is applied to individual properties at this time, other than those that have already been created, but rather it is an overlay on R1A, R1B, and R1D single-family districts that applies increased lot area and lot width requirements. Actually, it's just lot width requirements and increased setbacks for the creation of a new buildable lot. So in essence, that's how it applies. Not quite township wide, but again, it's an overlay on basically the single family districts, save for Hickory Island and R1C. So the other districts, those new standards, which are 125-foot lot widths and 30,000 square foot lots, apply when you create a new buildable lot in those other single family districts, either via land division or via subdivision plat, which again we haven't seen in years. More more predominantly, we would see like a condominium, site condominium type development. So, and the intent is really, it's a growth management technique. It was enacted, I think it was the late 90s. I want to say it was 98. I feel like we've talked about that before. I don't recall explicitly. But that was the intent. The intent was to not to continue to allow development, but to try to keep, to limit the density such that there were not burdens on infrastructure, services, natural environment, things of that nature. That's the
Mr. Chair,
two and a half minute version.
Can I ask a quick question in reference
Please,
to that I did not want to ask earlier during the lot split? But I think one of you had mentioned that would create an R1E situation with the lot split that we just approved earlier.
That's correct.
So assuming they come back to us with a site plan for condominiums, what does that look like with R1E?
125-foot lots with 30,000 square feet of area.
Right,
They'd have to change everything.
We would need to rezone.
right. And it would go through the same process or similar process that we went through a couple of months ago with the previous lot split request then. So they would come to us. We would either approve, assuming we would approve to recommend, then it would need to go to ZBA unless, no.
Well, again, I mean, it depends on how they wish to develop it. If what you're referring to is if they want to do multiple family, they want to do increased density, that would require a rezoning. You wouldn't do that via variances. They would attempt to rezone the property.
Change the zoning on that area.
Brian, it might also be interesting to point out about the allowed under R1E under the compression.
So
The
they would be
compression
asking-
of
they would be
lot, the
requesting
compression,
that of
you
us.
can
The
shrink.
open space development.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's something that isn't well known either.
Sorry, explain that?
So an open space development is, it allows, you do a parallel plan at the, whatever ordinance requirements on density are, but you are allowed to reduce widths and areas in exchange for the preservation of an equal amount of land. So the easy math is you have a 10-acre parcel that is in a 1-acre zone district. You'd be allowed 10 units theoretically. In an open space development, you could develop 10 units on 5 of the acres, and you would preserve in perpetuity the remaining 5 acres. So in essence, the overall density of the property remains the same, except that there have been some allowances for reductions in lot sizes to accommodate the equal amount of preservation.
Gotcha. Is that why we have a lot of conservation easements in different developments around here?
Not necessarily,
Okay, gotcha.
but because there have not been a lot of open space developments, though. It was something that was put into the law in the late 90s, early 2000s. And it can be a really useful tool. I've had some communities with some really, really nice open space developments where there were some significant natural features that warranted preservation, but at the same time, so the community gets kind of the benefit of both. The developer gets some benefit too, obviously, but overall, you protect and preserve the natural features, but you also retain the same number of units to whether you're thinking of it in terms of tax base or impacts to schools, whatever the case might be.
Based on your memory, how many applications has this planning commission seen where R1E was actually the deciding design factor?
So there haven't been a ton. You know, the easy ones to try to pick off are land divisions, which we have more of than other types of development reviews. But most of your land divisions have been adjustment of lot lines and not necessarily creation of new buildable lots. That's when R1E kicks in. R1E does not kick in on the shifting of a common lot line. So, for instance,
That's an important point. Say that again so everybody understands. If we have 2 lots and we want to change the lot line between the 2, does R1E apply?
It does not.
It does not.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. It's only when a new buildable lot is created. So it could be via land division, it could be via subdivision plat, it could be via condominium or site condominium development. So all of those create new buildable properties.
And I do not recall in the last 25 years seeing a subdivision plan or a site condominium plan where this even came into play.
Yeah, there would have been, at some point, I don't remember, like, for some reason, Wyandotte Woods pops in my head as being
Wyandotte Wood.
recent, but that's
Right on Meridian.
still probably 10 to 20 years ago, but that's
I don't
my
remember that.
memory and my age showing, so.
Okay.
But yeah, that's subdivision plat. No, we haven't seen a subdivision plat in years, and we're likely not to. That was the mechanism of how most land was divided. That's how most of the land has been divided in this community. But the process is pretty cumbersome. It takes a long time. There are a lot of steps. And when state law allowed for site condominiums, it essentially is visually, it's the same thing as a subdivision plat. You would drive the neighborhood, you don't know if it's a subdivision plat or if it's a site condominium, but the legality of the ownership is different. But condominium process is much quicker than subdividing.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
So, Brian, I just want to, I think Angela and I just want to get something clarified, how it impacts development, R1E. So, a few months ago, we had a lot split, and one of the lots did not meet the qualifications for R1E, right? So the lot itself was zoned R1A with an R1E overlay, right?
Correct.
So the reason that they didn't need it to be rezoned is because it was still going to be single-family R1A.
Correct.
Okay. The R1E could only be approved through special variance from the ZBA.
That's correct. It's essentially a dimensional variance.
Okay,
Yes.
so now let's fast forward to the lot split that we had tonight. If somebody came back and wanted to put a single-family home in there, it's already zoned R1A. They could meet the R1E criteria pretty easy on that lot, and everything is good. Everything's copacetic at that point. If they wanted to put multifamily homes in there, that's not R1A.
Correct.
They would have to, the township would have to rezone that whole area to multifamily.
You have R2 and R3 designation specifically, but yes.
Right, and R1E wouldn't play at all in that.
That's
because-
correct.
Okay, so yeah, it's just two recent examples of how the R1E and R1A work and multifamily work, and
Both good examples, yes, absolutely. And again, if the land division you recommended tonight is granted by the township, it will be subject to R1E standards. So if the transaction goes through, and if the new owner wants to just build one house, then they can build one house at R1E standards. If they wish to divide the property, again, likely via site condominium, it would be at R1E standards. So the site condominium units would have to be 125 widths, 30,000 square feet along, the road. Alternatively, to do anything more than that, they would have to change the zoning. Yep.
okay.
But that's the point where the R1E defines the maximum number that could be in there, but they could then go to the open space, open zoning.
So they could also do an open space development under R1E as well, sure.
But the R1E defines the maximum number that
That's
could actually
correct.
be there. And so when
Yeah.
you compress it, you can't put any more in that spot.
What happens when you do an open space development as part of the submittal requirements is what's called a parallel plan. And what a parallel plan is you basically have a civil engineer lays out the property for development at current zoning standards. And then that will determine the number of units. So if that results in, again, I'm going to use my easy math, but if that results in 10 units of conventional zoning and they want to pursue an open space development, I have to look into the details of yours, but traditionally, they would be allowed the same number of units, but on half the land, thereby a reduction in the lot sizes, but not an increase in overall density because they have to preserve and protect the equivalent amount of open space. So whatever the reduction is, typically the way it works is whatever the reduction in lot area is, you have to then preserve the equal amount of land as open space.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but in the open space development plan, it's still single family.
Correct.
Right? They can't go to.
Yeah,
multifamily.
and again, just because yours, we haven't applied yours. If it was very, very long ago. Some communities there's some different details within that. Sometimes it's not an equal 50-50 split, sometimes it's less. I do have a community that has an allowance for attached units, but I don't believe yours does, because I'm pretty sure we looked at that.
I think that's what we did over at Park Lane and Hazelnut Court, and, you know, the homes over there. We had some people here with the reduction of lot size created the buffer open space around all the lots.
Yeah, that predates the ordinance that we're describing, but, yeah.
That's too old.
Too old?
I
went back too, I just
You went
aged
back
myself.
too far, John. Okay.
So
Ross?
yeah, I'm just scrolling through yours real quick. Yours is a 50%, so it is essentially the equivalent preservation as development. There is I don't see a density increase, a density bonus, if you will. And I don't see, again, as I suspected, I don't see an opportunity for attached units. There is also, I should point out that, and again, I'm only applying it to the request you saw earlier tonight. In order to, part of the qualification steps for an open space development, you have to be able to develop the site with at least 15 units in your parallel plan. So my guess is that site would fall short.
Ross, for you, I remember during the walk around, when we were out looking at various things in the township, and I remember, at least at my table, when we were having the round table, there was some discussion about this. What is the Smith Group saying about this, if anything, at this point?
Yeah, so in the 2002 master plan, there was a build-out analysis that was created, which is, what's the capacity of the township based off of the services that we have and the available land that we have. And I think it was projected, I'm going off the top of my head here, but I think it was the population we would be maxed out at 16,000, right? And I think based off of that build-out analysis, that's what sort of, I don't know if it enhanced or if that's what created the R1E to help stop the development on the island. So, and right now we're at 10,700, 500 people. They're going to go back to that build-out analysis, what projections they used, and what methods, we have adopted since then to slow development, and basically update that and kind of say, okay, if there is development or opportunities for development on the island, what would have to happen with R1E? Does it make sense to keep it?
Okay, so they're gonna process data. They're gonna come back to us with recommendations to either revise or eliminate or whatever.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be between the data that they find, between the sentiments of the community, whether they want to keep things how it is, they're happy with things, and the needs of the township. Do we need to have that that additional income? A certain demographic. A housing type that fits a certain demographic, like younger families. Do we need to have that, and where would that make sense based off of the existing land use?
Okay, so this is well integrated into the process that we're going through.
Yes, yeah, no, they are very much aware of R1E and the standards and the story behind it. They are very much aware of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Russ, could you also just talk? I know we've talked about it, but you have had folks approach you and just decide not to go buy something or do something because of our R1E zoning, right?
Yeah, there's been definitely some cases. I know we actually sat down with a gentleman. Well, R1E wouldn't sit because it was already a buildable lot, so never mind. But for instance, like the Bodega House on West River, or is it East River? I can't remember. The Ford. Yep.
Ford Waterfront Estate. Yeah, it's the Pagoda House. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So there's I think the frontage is 110 feet or what have you, and it doesn't meet that 125 feet minimum. there's an entire property back there that they would like to develop and to put houses on, but they can't because of R1E. I mean, there's just been questions from real estate agents and from people who are interested in a certain parcel. And we've kind of said, well, you can't because of the R1E because you'd have to create a new buildable lot. So it's came up in conversation and from people interested in parcels on the island. But yeah, it hasn't gotten to the extent of coming to planning commission in that regard. So
There is an interesting side note to this. We have in some of the undeveloped areas, for example, by the Wayne County Bridge, where there are multitudes of lots that are 40 and 50 feet wide. And we in essence have an overlay on that that says if someone, you cannot come in and build on a 50-foot wide lot. You are forced to build on to an R1B standard, which is 80 feet. So in concept, it's the same sort of thing, obviously scaled down. But the idea was stopping, all those 50-foot lots and 40-foot lots from ending up with 40 and 50-foot homes.
No, thanks. I mean, this is all good information. I know I'm bringing. The reason I wanted to bring up the discussion is I've felt, at least from comments that I've heard here, comments that I've heard of the Zoning Board of Appeals at the Township Board level, that there is appetite for looking at possible changes to R1E. Obviously, we're going through a master planning process right now, which theoretically over time could modify this. From my experience, or not experience, from my understanding of master planning process and updates to zoning ordinances, that's many years off. I would say maybe 1 or 2 years off at the earliest after a master plan is completed. So because there's an appetite right now with this current township board to possibly do tweaks to R1E, is that something that the planning commission might be interested in? I wouldn't suggest any big changes, but just to allow a little bit more discretion where, where the instance we saw recently, the discretion wasn't allowed. So that's kind of what that's why I wanted to bring the discussion forward.
Well, let's discuss this timing. If we have a master plan in place in when did you say, November? Approved by the
November
board.
of this year, yep.
Ordinance change. Okay, if I understand it correctly, we're going to get a bunch of recommendations that say ordinance change A, B, C, D, E, based on whatever the data was driving it. Ordinance change is not complicated at all, and certainly not time consuming. I mean, literally, it's a public hearing and a planning commission review, and then a township board review. That's not 2 years. It's all a matter of priority.
And Brian drafting.
Yeah, and Brian, I think that's the time. That's the time.
Brian drafting.
Increment.
Oh, Brian
It's
drafting it. I didn't take that into account. Excuse me.
How much time do we have?
But you said, Brian, that you wouldn't be doing the zoning updates coming out of the master plan, right?
Well, that depends entirely on the nature of them, what the township desires. I mean, individual, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 off amendments, no problem. But if the recommendations turn into basically a full rewrite or overhaul of the zoning ordinance, then yeah, at my current capacity, that would be really difficult.
I will have to say, I think there was something that was just released on this today or yesterday, that there's grant monies available for like on a rolling basis, where if you have a brand new master plan adopted, you can ask money from the state for updating your zoning ordinance around housing.
That's cool.
Yeah, so because Michigan and just the country in general is kind of going through this housing issue of affordable housing, or for missing middle housing and stuff like that. There is that available. So, but
Well, the other thing that you have to consider, just because we have a new master plan doesn't mean that we're legally, have to adopt it, right? And the problem with this master plan is the timing.
Yep.
And Kyle's shaking his head, and the timing is that it's going to be given to the township right when we're getting a new township board. And you have no idea what that new township board is going to think about this master plan. They could say, you know what, wasn't involved with any of this, I have to look at it, we're not going to make any decisions now, we don't agree with it, or whatever. The nice thing about having a master plan done in the middle or towards the beginning of a new township board is that board participates in it, they buy into it, they understand it, and when the master plan comes out with recommendations, pretty much they've talked about everything in it and know the direction that they want to go, right? So we can't underestimate what a new township board's going to do with this master plan when they get it. Because everybody has a different opinion, and our R1E is a very good example of everyone having a different opinion. Because when you say that, wow, there's developers that look at these lots and they're only 80 feet and they're not developing and they're not coming over here to develop because they don't meet the R1E standards, a lot of people are going, yeah, great, we don't want that. That's why it's there, right? And there's people who go, well, that's terrible. We need to have this development, right? So it's a very, I don't want to say controversial. It hasn't gone that far, but it's, you can argue, both ways of what it is. So.
And I think that's exactly the point of what Ross is getting to with the data-driven decision-making.
That's right.
Because it's all just a matter of opinion until we actually have hard facts that say, look, this is the direction the community wants to go. And then we tailor whatever we need to change. R1E may be the least of the things that we change. Who knows? Okay? Until we have data, okay, it's all speculation.
I don't know what wayfaring is, okay, and I don't really want to know because it seems like it's for young people. But
you don't qualify.
It's finding.
Yeah.
It's wayfinding.
Oh, wayfinding?
That's
Wait, it's not wayfaring.
That's shopping.
However, I do know that housing, on the data that we've collected, was the third lowest importance of every one of those things that you presented to us, right? So.
Not done, but yes, that was striking.
That was. So.
Well, but we need more data. That's
Right.
That's not a big enough sampling size. And some of the factors, maybe all those people that wanted housing were all 70 years old. Okay? Mm-hmm. And so, of that 70 age block, 100% of them want housing.
Yeah, which equals
Okay.
4% of,
And so so right now, until you do the pivot tables and you find out how these various factors correlate, like Angela was talking about, we don't know.
And I think it's important, it was prioritized. So maybe they do want housing, or they don't care if we get additional housing, but they're kind of like, well, first, before we put any time, thought, energy, strategy, vision into housing, let's look at our recreation, let's look at our businesses, let's look at our restaurants. Maybe they don't think we have enough to appeal to people to move here to buy new houses. I mean, there could be a whole slew of, right? There's a lot of information there. I have a question. So the master plan approval process, this is just more kind of, the step-by-step. We take this master plan to the board. Does that include all of these ordinance recommendations, and they have to approve this on the whole, or do they approve like the vision and the delivery of the master plan, and then from there we pick apart, or they pick apart which ordinances fit that plan?
Kind of both.
Okay.
It would be the full plan. The plan will have an implementation chapter, and the implementation chapter will include recommendations to basically bring the plan to life. Now, because it's a master land use plan, essentially, a lot of those recommendations will be zoning ordinance changes. So it will include them, and they will be prioritized. All of that is done, though, obviously with steering committee, with commission and board and staff input. So, those types of things all come together. But that implementation chapter is part of the plan that the commission takes action on, and ultimately that goes to the board.
But each individual ordinance, goes through the public hearing, the planning commission, and then the township board. So if we write something that they don't like, okay, we may think it may meet, the goal of the master plan, but, they look at it and say, well, we don't like that. They'll reject it, and they'll say, well, try again, guys.
Okay.
So.
Okay, that's helpful. Okay, and that's kind of where my head was. So if they come back and there's 130 ordinance changes, then it could take a couple of years, but it might not be. But each particular ordinance would be reviewed at each.
Yeah, and you
Okay.
always start with the priority. What has the biggest impact
Okay.
first? What is most important for the community? Heck, up until what, 5 or 6 years ago, we had a list of ordinance changes that we got primarily from ZBA. Where we kept a list of them, and we worked our way down of things that needed to change in the ordinance, okay? And the subcommittee Jim and Jay and I worked with Brian to develop language and this sort of thing that was then presented to the planning commission, for their input, public input, and into the township board. And we worked our way down the list, and we cleaned up a lot of things that we knew were not right.
Yeah.
The other thing too, on all master plans or 5-year plans or 10-year plans or landscaping plans, and you spend all this money and this time, and over all the years I've been involved, 25 plus years, I don't know how many plans get done and it gets put on a shelf and nothing ever happens. Okay, it just sits there and it drives me crazy. So again, when we talk about this next election, okay, and we have this master plan that we spent a year on, okay, and all the information that was gathered and the people's time and talent that put into it, this community has to force the township board into implementing this plan, because they're not legally obligated to do it. It could just sit there. I don't care if they have 1 or 500 ordinance changes, recommendations, or directions. They don't have to do any of it. So it's real important that this is talked about from an implementation standpoint as we get closer. And I don't want to underestimate that. I don't want people to be disappointed if they go through this whole process and they find out that the next board has no appetite of doing anything, right?
I think that's a real big reason why we went with Smith Group, and why, because they look at, impactful yet, significant and easily implementable. Wow, I can't speak.
Yeah,
It's been 2 hours going on here.
Yeah.
Objectives that we can do as a township. It might be, anything from small to large, and they have exactly these would be the steps to and how you get this done. So, and they're going to have that included in the master plan. So,
And actually, Jim Budney, and in his participation when we were interviewing the Smith Group, one of the things he says is don't come back to us with blue sky, things that are out there that we have absolutely no possibility of ever implementing. Okay, that's useless. Okay, we need, he was very insistent. These things have to be practical, down to earth. They have to be something that we can take to the various parts of the community and implement. Okay, don't give us blue sky stuff.
Yeah. So when you look at that, and what we're talking about is R1E, you can say, okay, well, we have this ordinance that we want to change, whatever it is, and we go, yeah, that, like the things that Jay and you and Jimmy worked on, from the recommendation of the ZBA, you guys looked at it, that makes sense, boom, bring it here, we pass it, right? It made sense. There's probably going to be some of that, but when you look at those ordinances like R1E, now it becomes more controversial, right? Because you have a lot of people that have opinions on both sides of it, and those are harder to implement.
Yeah, on that point specifically, R1E, I think, Ross, I think you had it right. The history of it, I think it was you that was giving the history of it, that we had a build-out analysis that growing to 16,000 or something like that, and R1E is one of the key factors that kept us to the size that we are, right? The question is, what is the number that we would want to get to, right? I think people generally have a sense that some more growth in our population is probably desirable. Not across the board, but I think there's a relatively strong feeling of that. I don't think that means 16,000. And I'd like to see, as part of this analysis, and I don't know how hard it would be to do, if we lifted R1E, what would that open the door to? Because the fact that we haven't seen it kill too many things at this level doesn't tell us how many things it killed before.
Oh, totally, yeah. No, Lori and Ed Vogel were very clear about that. They were told that this would not pass and not to bring it, so they brought it just, I think, to make a point about R1E. And so I think a lot of folks have stopped or not brought things forward because of that. Just two things real quick. The one I'm most familiar with is Trenton. Trenton did a master plan. It was award-winning. Everyone loved it, but it took, I want to say, at least 5 years to implement. And it was controversial. It took a lot of time to do it, and then they finally did it. But for me, that's an example of one that takes longer. I don't want want to propose huge tweaks to R1E. I'm just saying a little bit more discretion is what I would suggest. And I feel there's an opportunity to do it now. I'm hearing you all that a lot of you maybe would like more data and maybe to wait through the master plan process. But I just want to give, again, everyone here an opportunity, like, hey, I think there's an opportunity to tweak it now if you're interested, or, yeah, if not, I can't promise what's next, obviously. So that's kind of where I'm at and why I wanted to bring this discussion forward,
I mean, to that point, I think it would be interesting to know, I mean, that particular lot that we're referencing that was presented to us, there wasn't a huge difference in the dimensions. It wouldn't have created, a more unique look. It would have, kind of maintained, I think, better. In my opinion, if you're driving down that road, if there were a home there, it would look more uniform to the rest of the community. And there are a few other lots that I can think of, but I have no idea on the actual dimensions, but very few. So to me, I don't know how controversial more discretion on R1E would actually be, because I think there's been a few, instances, but there's very few. But would it be impactful enough? Would we gain 4 homes and additional tax dollars and perhaps a few more kids in the district?
I mean, to me, I'll say at my level, to me, every home is impactful. Every
Yeah.
home adds taxable value. Every family you bring in is good. For me, that was a good example because while it didn't meet R1E, it met the underlying zoning criteria, which to me is a perfect example of the sort of thing that should be discretionary and allowable. But yeah, that's my opinion. And so yeah, everyone has told me to bring this to you all. If you all don't feel like it's a good use of time and resources at this time, I understand. For me, the master plan coming up and further zoning things coming up is a further reason to probably do it. Because if we do make a mistake and discretion, like a ton of people start coming and you all are getting R1E exceptions all the time, then we can say through the master planning process, oh, let's not do this anymore. That's my feeling on it. But yeah, I'll abide by what you all say.
Kyle, that actually leads into what my question would be.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to bring forward any discretionary changes to R1E, we would walk through a similar process via the Planning Commission, correct? And then we would bring that to the Township Board, and it would be a recommendation, and then they would approve or deny it. If they approve it, and then we're still going through the master planning process, so we could still then recommend further changes or elimination of or whatever during that master plan process, which is hopefully not 5 years.
I hope not too. Yes, I hope not too, but I can't say.
So I mean, to me, that's a consideration.
Yeah, that's exactly what would happen. If folks are in favor, then Brian would spend time possibly coming up, we'd come up with something to propose to you all, approve it or not approve it, and then it would go to the board and all that sort of thing. But if we don't want to spend that time, I know there's a lot of other things, a lot of other resources we could be spending that on, so I completely understand folks deciding not to do that,
Jim, what do you think?
I think it's interesting dialogue, but, learned a lot today about R1E, right? And I don't have much more to add. Thanks.
You want to envision some sort of tweaking at this point? I don't know what tweaking means, but...
Well, I have a suggestion on what tweaking means of this, and we look at this example as somebody that was involved back then discussing this R1E overlay after getting the build-out plan and seeing this map of Groseal totally built out scared all of us. And we came up with some things, and as Jay said, there's some things that we put in place, R1E being one of them. How much development did it stop? Well, we can say that we were told it was going to go, was it 16,000, something like that? And we weren't at 10,000 at that point, right? So it did prevent us from, let's say, overdeveloping or overpopulating the island, for sure. Other factors, economy and things like that, right? But so that definitely happened. But I can tell you that when we did this, in the spirit of it, there was the process of, well, the ordinance says you can't do it. 125 feet, okay? However, there's mechanisms or a system in place that would allow somebody to do it in special circumstances. We'll go to the ZBA would look at it, and they would go, the criteria of what you just said, the neighborhood plan, what's the lots, is it gonna be suitable for the area that the new reduced lot size from 125 feet down to 100 or whatever, is all that met? Yeah, okay, makes sense, we got a house, it's blah, 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 taxes, family, whatever, it's a good development. Prove it. Well, it didn't get approved. It got approved here, okay, because when we looked at it, we put that criteria in our decision, right? But the ZBA looks at it different. The ZBA looks at the criteria different than what the Planning Commission. So apply the conditions of the ZBA to that, they denied it, all right? So the tweak could be, and I don't know how you do it, is that any variance from the R1E in a situation like that is approved, a recommendation is approved to go right to the township board and not the ZBA. Just bypass the ZBA. We make the decision here based upon our criteria, which is more meaningful to development and community and all those things, right? And that goes to the township board, and they approve it or deny it, because they're the final say in this. How you do that, I don't know. If it makes sense, I don't know. But where I thought years ago that there would be discretion to be able to do R1E exceptions in a right development, I find out years later that I think Brian said we've done one since 2000 or 1999, and I was like, whoa, one. How many have we denied? I don't know, but I know the ZBA just denied one when the Planning Commission approved it. So maybe that's a tweak. I don't know. I mean, it's throwing that out.
No, I mean, and I'll just say, from conversations with the ZBA liaison, the ZBA commissioner, they'd be amenable to something like that. It wouldn't be that they'd feel like their power was taken away on that. I think they had trouble denying the petition, but they just felt like they had to under the criteria that they had, so.
I'm wondering if maybe there's another way to go at it, which would be something more like we did with the Bigfoot ordinance, where there are restrictions that are numerical, and then there's a range where we had discretion, and then beyond that range, there's no discretion. So, making up numbers out of thin air here, it says 125, that's the standard. We have the discretion to approve or deny from 125 down to 110, 100, something like that.
Yeah.
Below
like that.
100, we have no discretion. And therefore, we're not just willy-nilly approving things, and we disapprove that one, and we approve that one. We can't justify why, and, that sort of, because that's when you get into discretion, it's a matter of who asked when, who knew who lobbied better, that sort of thing. By putting some of those guardrails in, you get those close calls that, God, you're off by 3 feet. Everybody believes in this one, but you're off by 3 feet, we got no discretion, sorry. And then it gets to a point where it's like, you missed by 25 feet. You're not close. Sorry, even if we do like it, we can't approve it. So something like that could be workable if we wanted to mess with it now in advance of R1E. At least I think it could be workable.
That would make sense if we're speaking about infill development. As opposed to, for example, 9 acres. That 9 acres. I mean.
Yeah.
I mean that.
Yeah.
But infill development. If we applied some sort of. I think your analysis of the Bigfoot approach.
that-
You know,
that's
might
perfect.
have,
Yep.
might have some merit. I'll tell you what, could, Brian, you have any general thoughts on that at this point? Because what I'm about to suggest is maybe, you know, Jim, you and Jay and I meet with Brian and kick this around as to what the various options might be, and see if there's anything that we come up with, or various choices of different approaches that we could bring back to the planning commission.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I
Ranging
just,
from doing
any,
nothing to doing something.
yeah, any, you know, much like anything else where we have discretion, there's going to have to be pretty clear-cut standards.
Exactly.
I don't want to.
You can't get into what Jay was talking about, you know, whoever campaigns the most, or whoever knows somebody gets it and somebody else doesn't. You know, that has to be a key part of it.
Yeah, I just
Can't do anything unless you can
with
have-
something like this. I want to make sure, yeah, that we're protecting the township, the commission, the board, ultimately, you know, from making any type of arbitrary decision that isn't supported by ordinance.
Gotta be standards.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to put our heads together, because again, I'm sort of struggling to think of exactly how to tweak it. I mean, to me, the obvious was if you don't want to get rid of it, that's the obvious tweak. But if you want some mechanism of growth management left in the ordinance, then something that either changes those dimensions or puts forth some discretion with standards to grant the discretion or to use.
Well, I can tell you when it was put in place, it was in the spirit of discretion. However, you know, but it had to be clear cut, right? Because of what Jay just said, it was no. Okay, and we'll go from there. However, that discretion concept was quickly forgot, and it was just no.
Do we have a line of sight into, like, how many potential properties that might,
Oh,
just to get an idea of those numbers and the dimensions, so
Hundreds.
but we could take a look at,
See, that's something, though, that would have to come from the Smith Group. We
Well,
don't,
we have the map of the build-out. I mean, just look at the map of the build-out, and it'll tell you what all those lots
Well,
are.
that-
I guess,
that
let me
build-out was-
rephrase that. Is there an easy way for you to take a look at, or for us to take a look at, or is it like really time consuming to take a look at
to specifically look at like where we have buildable lots in the township.
or
and
might, right,
might.
exact, and what those dimensions are. So like, to Jay's point, is it, you know, is it 100? What's the right number, I guess?
To me, that would be very hard, because you know, you need, it's anyone that could split off a lot, you know? And
Yeah.
so, you know, there's any amount of combinations that could apply to, you know?
There's like online data for
Yeah.
parcel information with exact dimensions and all that sort of stuff without having to ask Margie to give me every single
Right.
lot, right? So it's possible. It would just be very time consuming. I think that,
I guess I'm just trying to avoid picking a number out of a hat.
right, yeah.
Right, like,
I mean,
and opening Pandora's box to go from having a few applicants in a few years to having like,
Did we-
you know,
right.
yeah, I don't know.
Is this a question we could put to Smith Group?
Yeah, no, I can definitely communicate that.
Why don't we ask the Smith Group and see what they think about this? You've heard the discussion tonight, you've heard the different thoughts.
Yep.
See what those guys say, and see if they can, with the data they've got, what can they tell us?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we don't have the resources to go out
No.
and search for this stuff ourselves. That's what we're paying them for.
Yep.
Let's use that data and let's find out.
Yeah, they'll need it anyway, that's true, that's a good
Yeah.
point. Yeah, I
And
like
then,
that.
you know,
we
ask
could-
them about various options.
Yeah.
We
I
could
don't-
potentially shrink the process if we put anything less than 5 acres only. You know, if it's over 5 acres, you know, we're not interested in variances.
Right.
you know, something
Permutations
like
of-
that. I mean, that
right.
could, and I'm pulling 5 acres out of the air.
Right.
So,
But
I mean, but
that's the
to
point,
your
yeah.
point, right? If we had an 11-acre parcel, you know, we're probably not going to be all that excited about smaller lots when we've said no to everybody else before this.
Exactly.
This is really more infill limitations.
Right.
Somebody has an empty lot next to them that's in keeping with the rest of the neighborhood.
Correct.
Why shouldn't they
Exactly.
be able to, you know,
Right.
something like
Just
that?
like the situation that we just had.
Yeah, I'll ask them how far along they are in their land use analysis and kind of see if they're coming up with any of that stuff, but then also fill them in on our discussion and kind of where the commission's at this point, where, you know, the different ideas that have been spoken tonight, and see what they think of it.
why don't you, feed that back with Brian, and when it, I do think that our ordinance subcommittee, Jay, you, Jim, and I need to, maybe sit down once Smith Group has commented. That work?
Thank you all. Thanks for the time. I know it's a long night, so I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, that takes us to the end of the meeting. Brian, we have a couple of applications, I think.
We have one submittal, and we have conducted an administrative pre-app on another, so there's potentially a second forthcoming. But I don't know if that's going to be 2 weeks or 2 months. So we do have one in hand.
So likely, when would we be getting together again?
So the goal is to make sure we have a complete submittal with the one that we do have, and then we'll get into the review process. We would probably look to meet, my guess would be if we can, February. If not, then I would say something, March for sure.
Okay. Well, we'll keep you posted based on the submittals, the applications. Okay, did we miss anything? Is there anything else that we need to, would like to discuss? Okay, very good. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion, support?
Support?
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.